I thought it was really interesting. They clarified it from GM1, right? So they said scoring elements, but then in GM2 they specified stone to capstones, so human player can't move the foundation. I know you were all wanting to. Here's the detail on tiebreaker points. We'll come back to this if anyone has a specific question, because we don't have a lot of time. Right, so setup, right, 24 stones each side. You can preload a capstone or put it next to your human player supply. You need to touch the wall and not another robot and not in a depot. So there is actually room to put both robots on the near side in the loading zone, but it'll be a little tight. So definitely something to think about when you're designing your autonomous modes. So here's all the stuff for auto mode, and we'll super zip through. We'll just come back here if we need, right? But 10 points foundation, 2 points per stone, unless it's a sky stone, then it's 10 up front. 5 points parking under, 4 point per stone placed in the foundation. Teleop, right? 1 point per delivering it, 1 point for placing it, 2 points per level. About delivery, right? So the robot and the stone has to go completely under together. So don't go over, right? Way back when, many years ago, FRC game teams were going over the bar because they didn't want to be short. Don't go over the bar. It's actually a penalty. The referees were here today paying attention to who was stepping over the bridge. It is a penalty. Don't step over the sky bridge. They weren't paying attention. They were here though. End game, right, capping. So no matter where you put that capstone on the foundation, it's always 5 points, and then 1 point per additional legal level it's placed on top of. There's actually in the back of the GM2, there's some really good diagrams that show what is and isn't legal building and scoring. I have a few of them in here that I thought were fun too. And then moving the foundation, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but then it's 15 points if you get it completely out of the building site, right? Completely out as in no part of it is in the building site, and then 5 points per robot parked in the building site. So so this is new, right? This year, if you can extend outside of the box, as long as Aiden you can get back in the box in setup. So your robot's able to extend, and this kind of just shows like they evolve the rules over time, but kind of slowly. Right, so like last year, if you hung, you could kind of open up and then close back. Now you can just open up all you want, as long as you fold back up before the match starts. So real-time scoring, right, we talked about it. It is happening. Delivering has to happen while the match is going. There's no other way to record that. So there will be live scoring all the time this year. And then again, right, if at the end, so you want to really make everything your robot does very clear and intentional. So you're never hoping, I hope the ref was paying enough attention to see it, or the scorekeeper. Make it really intentional and obvious. This was a new, interesting rule, which I think was a reaction from Relic Recovery, right? If you remember, people were like hiding and squirreling the stones away in Relic Recovery and putting them in weird bits of the field. You definitely cannot do that. So illegally used game elements, right? So the game elements are for playing the game. Right, human player, don't interact with the robot. That's the TLDR on that. Auto interference, right? Basically, this is a recurring theme the last many years in FTC. Play the game. Right, so scoring elements, you can't, only one at a time in the robot, unless they're in the foundation. That sounds important. So let the robot score, right? Basically, throughout the rules, there's these nice orange boxes, and in them, the game design committee basically wrote you a note on, this is what we were thinking, don't try and break this rule, don't try and overthink it, don't try and work around it, here's the intent. Read the intent boxes, they're usually very helpful in figuring out what's being asked. So basically, right, let people score, let the robot score. So there's some really important places to make sure you always allow robot access. Don't block access to the depot. Don't prevent them from moving zone to zone via the neutral sky bridge. That yellow section always has to be clear for all robot travel. Don't move zone to zone via your opponent's sky bridge side. And always don't mess with their quarry. So you can't mess with the quarry during autonomous mode. So right, building zone, building site. That gets a little bit confusing. So the site is the little triangle. So the foundation, there's some dimensions for it, all in the rules. So they have to remain completely in the building zone. You can never put your foundation on the other side of the sky bridge. Completely in, so like you can't even, not even a corner, nothing. It's got to stay completely in that back building zone. And so you can't control, so there was actually a mistake in the game animation, shocker. You cannot control, so the game animation said, and you can't knock over your opponent's skyscraper. Not true. So you cannot control your opponent's foundation when it's in their building site or endgame. If it's not in the building site or endgame, you are free to control your opponent's foundation.
Sorry.
So you may, so here's the thing. You may grab, grasp, grapple, whatever, move around your foundation. You cannot grab your opponent's foundation because you cannot break the vertical plane. But there's nothing about pushing it. So can you descore? So the intent box says no. The way it's written says yes. And Ken and I messaged Game Design Committee and confirmed last night that is what they intended. So you can descore, right? If you're legally controlling your opponent's foundation and stuff falls over, it's fallen over. I'm not happy about this. I hope they change it. I think it's super mean to knock someone's skyscraper over, but it is legal. There's a nice scoring summary table at the back. It's super hard charting up here.
I'm doing it.
This is a nice scoring table. I thought was really nice this year. They added this helpful win scored column at the back. So here's some prints, right? So it's 14 inches on the sky bridge. If you guys have questions, you should start lining up because we've only got 12 minutes left. So there's a lot of like really nice little clever stuff in the game design this year that you won't necessarily notice, but I like to point it out. Everything is very neatly lined up with tile edges. You can keep things taped out when you pull the field apart this year. You can, it's exactly one stone width, put the stone in there and wedge the foundation against it. There's a lot of very nice, clever, easy field setup stuff. So there should be a lot of repeatability in the field setup. The stones, right there, you have them here, 4x4x8. The sky stone is exactly the same thing, just with the picture. Again, they weigh about 180 grams. Right, the quarry is randomized in the traditional 1, 4, 2, 5, 3, 6 patterns, and they inch their way back one stone at a time for each of those. They're all in the rules. Here's some of those fun scoring examples, right? So like the ones laying down don't count as a skyscraper. The higher up you put the capstone, the more points, right? So like this isn't the legal skyscraper. I'm not even sure someone could build it. You're all welcome to go try though.
Even if you can do it, you have to be able to do it.
So this one I thought was really interesting to show. So these skyscrapers, if you see B and C, they're touching, but there's no interlocking, so they're separate skyscrapers. So maybe there's something you can do there. All right, field layout, good stuff, all in the rules. Looks easy? Yeah. So we'll go on here. Questions?
For the human player, when they place the stones in the depot, do they have to be in or completely in?
So when the human player places a stone, does it need to be in or completely in the depot? So I'm almost certain it needs to be completely in. Go double check. There's there's A, B, C, D, E rules on placing the stone into the depot, right? No other robot there, no other stone there. If the robot's disabled, they don't count because they're not a hazard. They're really trying to protect you. You have to put it in by hand. You can't use a thing to reach it. It's gotta be in there. Yep. Aiden?
Can a human player load a block with a capstone on it? And can you place your teammate's capstone?
So there were two questions, right? So can a robot place a stone and a capstone together? No.
Oh no,
One at a
human.
time.
Can a human player?
Oh, human, sorry.
Yeah.
A human, no. The robot can actually control a stone and a capstone together. But the human has to do one at a time. And then what was the second question?
Can you place your teammate's capstone?
Oh, no. Every robot can only place one capstone. It's very specific. So don't build your skyscraper too big for your partner if you want those points. Yeah. Yes.
Can a robot be in control of a stone and a capstone at the same time?
Yes, so the robot may control one capstone and one stone. So it's an and or, right? So you can have one stone, one capstone, or one of each. But only one stone. Stone or sky stone, they both count as stones.
Can you place 2 capstones on one skyscraper?
Yes, so you may place both your alliance capstones on one skyscraper, and you may even place them on top of each other as long as the one below it is equally scored, and those both score. But it has to be done one per robot.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So you were saying before that we can have 2 separate skyscrapers side by side. So can we have one capstone that caps both of them? Like a 2x1?
So anytime you score something that is scored in 2 legal ways, it only scores once and the higher value thing. So, right, so you'll have to go back and double check the exact max capstone dimensions. I don't actually recall seeing it anywhere. But Ken said it was 1 no larger than 1 stone, right? So if it was, you could theoretically have it spanning 2 skyscrapers. It'll only score once and on the higher value.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, that's a general robot placement, stone placement, all those things, right? They only score once and at the highest value.
I'm gonna get, he's gonna
If your
yell
robot
at
is
me.
in the building zone and touching your skyscraper, is it legal to go into the loading zone with an arm and grab a stone?
Could you repeat that again?
If your robot is in the building zone and it's touching your skyscraper, can you use an arm to go into the loading zone and grab a stone and bring it back and put it on?
So there's a lot to that. So if your robot is, your robot can do whatever it wants in the foundation with as many stones as you'd like because there's no limit. So if you were building a tower and then you want to reach into the loading zone and get another stone to keep building your tower, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would
So,
assume.
okay, so remember a few things. You only get delivering points if the entire robot crosses the sky bridge with that stone. And your building site and your depot are on opposite corners. So, I mean, there is no, as far as I know, there are no rules that would prevent you from doing this. There's just a lot of things in the way, robots in the way, structures in the way, and you would not get delivery points for it. And so the delivery points are, it's quite clever, right? Because it's enough points that you can't ignore it necessarily, right? Because if you're just building small skyscrapers, it basically doubles the points because it's 1 point on the foundation and 1 point for delivering. So it almost doubles your points. So you don't want to necessarily ignore it, but it's certainly not enough points to win by it. Although maybe it is early in the season. That's something that should come out in your team's decision matrices, right? Whereas how you see the game playing out and all that type of stuff. So, I mean, yeah, but so when they're in the foundation, they don't count against your limit. So you can control as many in the foundation as you want. Like I said, I think that's important. Yes?
Is there a certain amount of time the human players are controlling the robot, working with the robot?
So the human player never interacts with the robot. They're very specific about that. It's very safety rule oriented, right? So you can place a stone for your robot in the depot as long as there's no robot there, and then they can come and get it as long as there's no human player there. So there's never, and it's penalties otherwise if you do, there's never human player to robot interaction.
So just to clarify, you can place the stones in the depot, but a robot can't be in the depot while the human player is placing.
Right, that's correct. So the human player can put the stone in the depot, the robot can get it from the depot, but not at the same time.
So you don't have to drop, like not make contact with the stone, not make contact with the floor as the human players touch it. Does that make sense? So you don't drop it, you place it.
They use the word place, but I don't think they're that specific. Go double check that and then ask. Right, so remember, these rulings are totally not official. They are from me reading through the rules a couple times and putting a few slides together and having many seasons of experience. So really, If you're worried about it, you definitely should post it on the Q&A when it launches in about a week and a half, right? I think Ken said the 16th or 17th. So definitely post those things to the Q&A. Don't take my word for it. Do not go to the event and go, but Rob said I could do it at kickoff. Because that's months from now when you're in that event, and it also might have changed, right? So pay attention. Pay attention to rule revisions, pay attention to the Q&A, ask the questions on the Q&A. This is to get you enough information to do your robot on one weekend and feel comfortable enough about it, and to get your season going for the next couple weeks till the Q&A is there, right? Because you got to wait till the Q&A is up, you got to ask the questions. They get flooded with questions right away, I'm sure. So there's a backlog, right? It might take you 3 weeks or so until you have an official answer. So that's why we're doing this. Yeah.
Okay, so I have 2 questions. One, can you start stacking the blocks in the foundation if the foundation is not in the build site?
Yes, so as long the foundation has to stay in the building zone, it never has to be in the building site. The building site protects the foundation and the blocks on it from your opponent, right? So if during the normal tally-out portion of the game, your foundation's in the building site, the little triangle, your opponent cannot mess with it in any way. And they can never mess with it while you're scoring or mess with you while you're scoring, or all those normal every year rules of let the robot score. But remember, if your foundation is not in the building site, the way it's written, they can come and push it around and knock the skyscraper down. So, right, and that's what I said, like the foundation movement thing is a little bit wonky the first few times you read it. So definitely sit down with it and like think about it and map it out. But right, so basically you get points for moving the foundation in auto, and you get points in endgame for taking it out. If you don't get it in an auto, you can move it in during tally-out to still get the endgame points for moving it out. Read it over, it's kind of weird. What's the second question?
The second question is, I just want to confirm that if we were to have skyscraper A and skyscraper C right next to each other, and because they aren't interlocked, that would be considered 2 skyscrapers, right?
Right, so the way they have it here, yeah, they have 3 legal skyscrapers. Remember, you're only getting the bonus for the 1 tallest skyscraper, though. Right, but they've shown it like this, right? Because skyscraper C might get knocked down more easily than B, because there's interlocking and things going on in B, block to block. So, or you're building one, your partner's building one, whatever. But right, you're only going to get the bonus for the tallest standing when everything comes to rest at the end of the match.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, so for one thing, can you take a capstone and then put it on a stone and then take both of them and put it on top of your skyscraper at the same time?
Yeah, so the way it's written, yes, you can do that, because you are allowed to control both of those at the same time, and then there's also no limit in the foundation. But remember, you can only cap in endgame.
Okay, and for another thing, are you allowed to be holding the skyscraper while you move the foundation? Like,
Sure.
yeah.
As long as it's in the foundation, right? You can manipulate as many stones as you'd like in whatever configuration they happen to be in, as long as they're in the foundation. And that means breaking the vertical plane of the edges of the foundation. Right.
So, as for moving the foundation, because if it's not in your build site, the opponent can like mess with it and push it, right? So if they knock over your skyscraper, how do the points apply?
So the skyscrapers only score at the end of the match when everything comes to rest, right? So if your skyscraper gets knocked down by you or an opponent or however it gets knocked down, it doesn't count. Okay. Right, so that's why they have that nice scoring chart, right? So some stuff happens active, some stuff is at rest.
I also have 2 questions. The first one is, can the human player load on the capstone and a normal stone at the same time?
So, no, I don't believe they can. I think it's 1 item at a time. Go double check that one though.
And my second question is, can you use an alignment tool when you load the sky stone or the stone?
What do you mean when you load it?
When the human player loads it.
Oh, no, so the human player can never use a tool. They have to use their hands.
Okay.
Unless there's an accessibility accommodation, right, that the regional director approved for that event. But no, they gotta do it by hand.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi, my name's Matt.
Hi,
Matt!
What's your favorite robot?
What's my favorite robot?
Python?
Is this like any robot ever or first robot ever?
Any robot, real or fantasy?
I don't know about any, but my favorite first robot is Team 60 from 2002 because they went and they picked up the goals, and it was a really cool idea. And it was before you could buy shifters or anything, so they had multiple gearboxes, and they disengaged half the gearboxes to switch to different gearboxes, and it was really clever and very good.
Very cool.
It was better than 71.
Can you ask them if they're all excited about this challenge?
Yeah. So how are people thinking? Are you excited?
Yeah!